Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. So, now that I'm done with my Wonderland Nightmare series, there's prints available for the whole series, and there will be a link in the description for this video if you want to go check those out and pick up a print. But now that I've completed them, I'm going to share my time-lapse videos for the entire series. So I'm starting with the first piece that I did, which is the White Rabbit. And the way it looks right now in the early stages where it's all red and white, I very seriously considered doing that for the entire series, just keeping them in very simple, flat, very monochromatic style. And as I went through and I slowly started fleshing it out, adding more colors to it, it started gaining more of a, I don't want to call it a naturalistic palette, but it definitely had more of a rendered feel and more of a broader palette of warms and cools. In my own personal taste, I tend to lean towards monochromatic palettes, but I really tried to use this piece and this whole series really as a chance to experiment with learning how to properly use Procreate. And part of that was just kind of playing with the painting aspects and playing with color a little bit more. So, as opposed to thinking just in terms of value, light and dark, which I do try to take that into consideration for most of what I do, particularly since a lot of it is black and white and monochromatic. But I really try to think in terms of warms and cools. Really using the warm colors, even though the background is all cool. I mean, the background is all warm, being very red. I really tried to play with that contrast, almost kind of flipping the warms and cool. Usually warm colors come forward and cool colors recede, but in this, I sort of kind of flipped it a little bit. And you'll see at a certain point when I add in the front shadow area, part of that is really just to give you the sense that he's backlit without making him dark. Instead of making the White Rabbit very, very shadowed and very dark in the front, I just made the angle that you're seeing, his front face, I ended up making that very cool. And you'll see that as I go through and develop here. But for now, a lot of it is just going in, adding in little bits so that, the leaves, all the different touches, and me trying to figure out how much of those background elements I wanted to leave black and white versus actually adding color into them. Because for the most part, when I start off with this, most of that background is black. There's little bits of individual leaves there, but a lot of it is heavily, heavily dark. At this point, the way we're looking at it now is almost what I thought the final piece was going to be. Really just adding in the sort of halo of sunset around the White Rabbit's head. But then beyond that, it was really just going to be sort of like the kind of off-white, slightly beige suit. And then just, the real color on the character is going to be just his hair and the makeup and his teeth. But this is one of the things that's also interesting in working in this series. And I've mentioned this in previous live streams when I was working on other parts of the series. But there's something that I think I really took away from the One Fantastic Week fantasy podcast, in that when they talk to a lot of artists and giving them advice about working the process, they definitely recommend working in series. Doing not just one singular piece, but maybe doing 5 pieces, 10 pieces, 12 pieces, however many. And I have not really done that in the past. And in this particular process, part of it was also me trying to see what would happen if I took some of their advice and tried that. And in working in a series, I saw that what I thought was finished in this piece very much continued to evolve as I did the next character and the next character. And I came back and kept opening this file up, taking another look, making some changes, some tweaks. And then once I really started when I started seeing how much of a cool palette I was adding in the other pieces, really contrasting, instead of light and dark, it became warm and cool. When I saw how much of an impact that type of coloring was making in the later pieces, I came back to this one and said, all right, well, let me really go back and add in some of these blue shadows here. And as you can see, at first it's just me painting in, a little bit of shadow, but I decided to go really stark with it. And as you can see now, it's a big transition where the whole thing is blue. And what I ended up doing was trying to make it where I would take that whole area and then mask it out, so that it's almost like this blue light could sort of worm its way into any part that was turning away from the sunset behind him. So as you can see, I slowly kind of work this all in. I mean, and there's places I definitely go back and forth on this, because on one hand, I really like how dramatic of a contrast it is at this point, where it's very, very blue in the front facing part of the figure, but it almost felt to me like it was just too much, too over the top. And as cartoony as this is, I still wasn't going for a very naturalistic palette. I don't think much of what the work I do, I don't think any of it really does have that naturalistic feel in general. I think I tend to think it's sort of an animation-y, cartoony, high pop palette. So I liked what I had there, but as you can see, it was really just a matter of lowering the opacity of that so that, these cool shadows were working their way into the warms. So then it came something that was definitely much more dialed back, way less stark, in my opinion. And this isn't necessarily, again, something that's consistent throughout all of the pieces. As I go through and worked on this series, some of them are a little bit more starker, and I decided, well, let's just see what happens if I go and let this be cartoonier. But this was me just sort of like experimenting around it and modulating. At this point, you may not be seeing a lot of the changes, because these are really me just putting the finishing touches on here. What I'm really doing here is going through and coloring the line art now. And it's more of like changing the gloves from black line to sort of those cool blues, lightening the line work in his vest, so that instead of being black, now it's more in those brown and the same tones that the vest color itself is in. And even in the background, going through and in the line art that's close to sunset, warming that up, and the line art that's closer to the camera, cooling that off. But yeah, it was a very interesting experiment. I learned a lot that I used in other pieces. Thanks for watching. This video was brought to you by my subscribers on patreon.com. If you'd like to join them, go to patreon.com/GERIMI. For as little as $2 a month, you'll receive a bonus monthly video and a ton of behind-the-scenes artwork and blog posts. To read pages of my comics for free and keep up with what I'm creating, sign up for my monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And to buy physical copies of my comics or read digitally on Amazon Kindle, go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. That's it for now. Go be creative.